Fonterra, good evening. Southland's economy will see flow-on benefits from yesterday's announcement that the immediate future of the Tiwai Point aluminium smelter has been secured through the signing of a long-term electricity agreement with Meridian Energy. I spoke to Southland Chamber of Commerce Chief Executive Richard Hay about what it means for the region economically.
Well, the first thing it's going to do is that it's going to give some stability, and it's going to give a relief to everybody that things are more secure for the future. So the first thing that we can see, I would hope, is that retail will start to pick up, because I'm sure that one of the reasons why retail has been flat lately is because nobody is really sure about what the future brings for smelter.
How much of a flow-on effect do you think it'll have in Southland?
Well, we'll see much the same as what we've got now in terms of what's coming into Southland from the smelter. I don't think that's going to change much at all. But hopefully what will happen is people who haven't been spending because they haven't been sure what the future's going to bring are going to start spending more. But of course, the people who are supplying the smelter at the moment, the status quo will pretty much remain. But what it'll do for them is give them the security for planning for the next 4 years, and that's the big thing. They'll be able to budget, they'll be able to buy in raw material, they'll be able to stock things ready to supply.
Now, this is only a short-term solution, really. Do you think the smelter has a long-term future in Southland?
Well, when we say short-term solution, I mean, this comes up periodically. I mean, every 4 or 5 years they renegotiate. So we're only talking about history repeating itself in those terms. What's happened here is that, in essence, they have rolled back the agreement of to the previous agreement. So we've got a 4-year gap. But another 4 years, they'll negotiate for the next 4 years, and so on and so forth. In terms of longevity, well, there's a misconception that the plant is getting old and the place is getting worn down, but it isn't, because it reinvents itself every 10 years or so. That's a new plant. So it's not ever going to get old from that point of view. So there's certainly longevity. So long as there's a market, so long as there's raw material, and we can supply the people to run it, then it's always going to be there, certainly through to 2030.
Fonterra's board has announced there will be an independent review of the cooperative's performance at the time of and following the manufacture of contaminated whey protein concentrate. Moves were made to recall a number of products, including infant formula, from the market after it was discovered 38 tonnes of whey was potentially tainted with a strain of bacteria that can cause deadly botulism illness. Fonterra is nearing the final stages of getting the issue under control, and the operation will soon shift focus to reviewing exactly what happened. Meanwhile, government is continuing to deal with market effects of the possible contamination and has ceased issuing export certification for any potential at-risk products. An unidentified white powder found in a letter which led to a lockdown at Invercargill prison 2 weeks ago has been found to be harmless. The prison was briefly locked down after an unidentified white powder was found in a letter opened by a staff member in the prison's administration block. 3 administration staff were put through a decontamination process as a routine precaution. Police say analysis has shown that powder is glue, which had broken down from the back of a picture and won't follow up further. Meanwhile, results are still being awaited from another incident involving a man finding white powder in a drink can near Gore, although this too is not believed to be sinister. Changes to the warrant of fitness inspection system will be introduced from January, with some vehicles requiring annual inspection rather than every 6 months. From January 1st, light vehicles registered between 2004 and 2008 will only require an annual warrant of fitness inspection. From July, annual inspections will be extended to include all light vehicles first registered after January 1st, 2000, while new vehicles will receive an initial inspection, another at 3 years, followed by annual inspections. Vehicles registered prior to 2000 will remain on 6 monthly inspections. The changes are expected to save New Zealanders $1.8 billion over 30 years. There were no flames in sight as rural firefighters practised the art of fighting fire near Invercargill this afternoon. 15 rural firefighters were training with a helicopter and monsoon bucket at Sandy Point near Invercargill this afternoon. Southern Rural Fire Authority trainer Sally Chesterfield says the training helps the firefighters get a better understanding of how to use this type of equipment in a real fire situation. More than 9,000 litres of water were dropped in the area as part of the exercise, with training held at this time of year when there's less chance of being called to a real fire. Stay with us after the break. What new earthquake policy could mean in the Southland district. Welcome back. Government's new earthquake strengthening policy includes a 20-year time frame for landlords to reinforce earthquake-prone buildings and an additional 5 years for heritage building owners, which is seen as positives by Southland District Council, but costs and resourcing to assess a wider range of buildings had not been anticipated. It's estimated up to 450 buildings will require engineering assessments in the district, and it's thought over half could be heritage buildings. Margot Sutherland spoke to District Council Group Manager of Environment and Community, Bruce Halligan, who says safety needs to be balanced with affordability.
Would be we could have in the order of 350 to 450 buildings in the category that needs to be assessed, and indicatively an assessment can cost $2,000 to $3,000, so I'd say ballpark estimate could be around about $700,000.
It's not a lot of yield in some of these smaller towns for the owners of these buildings. Is it likely, do you think, that we're going to see some major buildings coming down in some of these towns and some blanks in the landscapes?
Oh, I certainly hope not, but I guess that's a possibility. And as you say, Margot, when you go to places like central Wellington, if you've been there recently, down Lambton Quay, a number of the older buildings there are being strengthened, and they're being marketed as having been strengthened, and that's quite a marketing ploy, and those building owners can get a reasonably immediate return around that by getting the buildings tenanted and up and running in the way they go, and hopefully recouping some of those costs over time. But that's a lot more challenging in some of our small towns. If you haven't got people queuing up to go into the buildings, then there's not a big incentive for the owners to do that initial outlay, because they've obviously got a concern whether they're going to get any payback for that. So certainly a significant challenge for our communities.
What sort of costs could landlords be faced with?
Oh, it's obviously going to vary from building to building, but certainly $200,000 plus is not an unheard of cost by any means for strengthening a medium-sized commercial building, say if it's unreinforced masonry. So it's not small change by any means.
It is an opportunity to lift the quality of the building stock around the towns.
Oh, definitely. I mean, that's the positive on it, and I certainly hope that, say in towns like Winton, where the heritage buildings are a real feature down the main street, as we all saw in The World's Fastest Indian, where part of it was filmed down there. I'm hopeful that those buildings will be strengthened and we can retain those heritage values, but at the end of the day, somebody's going to have to pay, and it's a significant challenge for those building owners, and hopefully we can do whatever we can to try and assist them through that process.
A year-long study of Māori living with disabilities in Southland will culminate with an art exhibition. The Hauamana Māori project was a collaboration between Ngāketi Mātauranga Panamu Charitable Trust, Otago University and the Donald Beasley Institute, and saw 29 participants share their views. The idea of the project was for Māori with disabilities and their whānau to be able to express their ideas of well-being. An art exhibition is on display at a Martin Street store for the public this weekend, having been chosen as a way to conclude the project celebrating participants' creativity and contribution.
In the process of doing this research, we realised that a lot of our participants were incredibly creative, and that why not do something at the very end that celebrated their creativity, but also it gave us a medium and a platform to feedback to the community, to the services, to the whānau, to our participants, what were the findings of this research study.
Now, what will happen with the findings of this study?
They will possibly go onto the Ministry of Health website. The other thing is that a lot of the participants and families and publics can access the reports. They are public documents. And we give out a handout at the exhibition opening and throughout the weekend that it's on, and we talk a lot about it. So a lot of it's through the kumarawai, through talking to people who come through the exhibition about what we did, and directly recommendations to services.
For artist and participant Diana Barlow, it's a chance to share her work.
Because I enjoy working with people, and also enjoy what I do, like my paintings and my karakia. So I enjoy all this sort of thing.
And that's it from news. Sports here next with Wyn Gray and Gregor Paul previewing the coming All Blacks season. We'll leave you now though with the week that was. Good night.